Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
It's not an exciting story, but I've never posted about it here before. Still a child, in upper elementary school. The city graveyard is 4 houses down and across the main road. Poor living conditions because Mom and Dad split up and we couldn't make ends meet. Mom has her alcoholic friend move into the garage with her 2 daughters. We were splitting rent and utilities. TLDR on the rest of the backstory, a few months after they moved in, the alcoholic friend and her boyfriend were out 4-wheeling with the kids on the back of the ATVs. The mother crashes somehow, dies and takes the youngest out with her. Mother's friend is taken in by her boyfriend again for some reason. Forced to attend the closed casket funeral later. Within a month I started getting the feeling of being watched in the house. Taking a nap in the middle of the day facing the wall, and I roll over half awake. Barely open my mucus-filled eyes, someone is standing in front of me with long hair. Think it's my older brother because he's in high school, has long hippie hair at this point, and likes to pick on me. Open my eyes all the way and the girl that died is just standing there staring at me, but with extremely pale skin. I don't stay to get a better look, I scream and jump out of my bed and run down the hallway. For perspective, it took me longer to get out of my bed and to my room's doorway during a failed home invasion where things could have really been on the line. Not worth the GT, they kicked in the back and as soon as the house alarm went off they hauled ass. Mom is in the living room, go and cry to her about what happened. A Baptist priest comes that night. He lights candles throughout the house, opens every window, and recites scripture that I was too young to remember. He was there for at least a couple of hours. Next day Mom and brother have a sit down with me, tell me that they've been experiencing weird things around the house too, but nothing like what I was crying about. Weird stuff continues to happen. Occasionally throughout the night, hear clangs of metal coming down the hallway from the kitchen. Family cat just stops going in the garage. Still feel that weird sensation of being watched, but even more present. Later on brother claims to have seen her run in front of his car in the middle of the night, which resulted in him going off the road and hitting a tree, but I'm pretty sure he was driving drunk and that was his excuse. Mom says she experienced something similar, but she's an attention whore, so I didn't really pay attention to whatever schizo spiel she had to say about it. We move into another house a few miles away and weird stuff stops happening. Had nightmares about that isolated incident almost nightly for years until I was put on medication to inhibit dreaming. Multiple psychiatrists over the years have stated that this was my way of coping with the situation. But I wasn't traumatized or even much bothered by it. It only started to bother me when I attended the funeral. I think it was a genuine paranormal experience, but I just don't understand why she'd come back to our home and mess with us. I think if she wanted revenge or wanted to haunt someone, she'd have gone for the drunkard's boyfriend. I just hope she's found peace at this point. I don't think whatever the priest did worked, and I'm sure that all we did was leave her behind when we moved. Sorry it wasn't more interesting, friends.
Here goes, only ever remembered this. Be me, probably 5 or 3, since it was definitely a time where I was still super small. At a Special Olympics event in our state, my older sister is doing lap swimming or something. Remember getting bored as hell, somehow get separated from Dad and start wandering about the sports complex. Obviously get lost. The building has high ceilings in most major halls and doors with signs I obviously couldn't read at the time. Lost. Try walking in and out of doors that I think lead to pools. Going off the smell of chlorine and sight of big double doors alone since I associated it with where I was sitting with my dad. Keep walking into what seem like smaller lap swimming pool areas, yell for Dad into what I realize are all empty rooms. Eventually give up and cry while wandering the halls of the sports complex or whatever it was. Approached by 2 people, twins it looked like. I didn't really know about stranger danger at the time, so I just end up telling them everything in my panic. I remember the girl out of the 2 very clearly. She had extremely neat blonde hair in that bob style you'd see a lot during the 90s 2000s on teenage girls. The guy had a similar cut, just shorter and more masculine I think. Both of them had similar outfits too, but nothing like security guards or whatever. More like Girl or Boy Scouts with an orange and brown theme. Both of them walk me between them, taking me by the hand as we wander in and out of various rooms and areas of the building. A lot of these places seem closed off, like those viewing areas over gymnasiums and rooms that had pool tables and air hockey in them. Feel calm and reassured They have an almost infectious positive energy my child self can't help but latch onto. Eventually, I am led into the main hallway in front of the front doors after I don't know how long. Seem to gloss over that the entire time I was with them, I didn't seem to see any other people. At an event in the upwards of the hundreds in regard to attendees. My parents are there, probably were talking to a security officer before I run up to my mom and hug her leg as tight as I possibly can. Dad is clearly in major shit for letting me wander off, but I think both of them are just relieved to see their son again. Turn around to thank the scouts who helped me. Gone or blended entirely into the crowd. Don't really ask my parents about if they saw anyone with me, like a dumbass. Eventually pass out or something, because I don't remember much else after that. It probably has a more normal explanation, but I don't really think that these sports complexes and events hire teenagers who seem to be constantly smiling and happy to help redirect kids back to the front entrance of the building.
Okay, backstory. Years ago. Going on the river to kayak all day. Last minute had to work. Agreed to pick everybody up downstream, drive them in boats back upstream to the drop-in. Got there way early, killed time at a roadside bar a mile or so away. Walk in, see 3 people, surrounding 2 other people, something definitely is up. 2 guys, very shaken up. Both looking dead at me and terrified. Ask what's up, one of the other guys comes up and directs me to the bar. Take a seat, ask for a beer and an explanation. Apparently the 2 guys were hiking, saw something and got freaked out. To the point they got off the trail, somehow ran down a cliffside to the highway in the valley below and followed the road to this dive. The bartender seemed skeptical about their escape, because this was a massive ridge they would have had to come down. The Department of Natural Resources, EMT, and local sheriff had been called and were on the way. Asked the bartender what they saw. He dismissively said a bear or something and went back to the group. Now trying to finish beer and GTFO before law shows up. While I'm finishing, I hear one of the hikers sobbing and clearly make out the words in those eyes. The guy starts going hysterical and I can't make out anything else. The rest of the group is trying to calm him down. EMTs get there first and are talking with the hikers. Department of Natural Resources officers arrive next and are hovering over. None of this is odd in any way, just typical first responder crisis stuff. I take my leave by following one of the 3 guys out the door. He asks for a cigarette once we're outside. I ask him what happened. He replied,
Something put the fear of God in them.
I've never forgotten that phrase, or the grave tone and how he said it. Asked what it was and he just shook his head, preoccupied with the county sheriff vehicle pulling right up to us. Cop gets out, asks what's going on, looking directly at me. I replied I don't know, I'm not the one who called, I just pulled up. The guy I walked out with explained that 2 hikers got freaked out pretty bad and are inside. Cop asks me to wait outside please and goes in with the other guy. I stay outside and chain smoke another cigarette, nervous because I'm young, just had a beer, driving, and cops are all up in this shit. Also nervous because I need to get to the river and pick up friends. This was before cell phones. Again, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I wasn't into supernatural shit at that age and was more concerned with getting laid and staying out of jail, so I doubt I would have noticed anyway. Eventually cop returns, this time with a Department of Natural Resources officer. They take a brief statement, ask for my contact info, and I'm free to go. Ask if they're okay, was told they'll be fine, minor injuries. Both were in a state of shock but they're being attended to. I leave and meet up with my friends. Tell them what went down, load it up, and go off. Never really talked about it or brought it up because it honestly wasn't that eventful. One of the girls in my group said she tried to find a police report about the incident but couldn't. Again, pre-internet and we lived over an hour away. Now, fast forward several years. I'm now married with 2 young kids. Wife and children are currently at church now. I'm nursing a work injury and am bored off my ass on the couch and lurking. The reason why I'm on here is because of my next story. As uneventful as my Lost Hikers event was, 2 things have always stayed with me. If I have a nightmare and wake up, it's from the paralyzing look of fear on the face of that hiker and the strained and unnatural way he said those eyes. If someone mentions the phrase fear of God around me, I always flinch, instantly taken back to the cigarette guy and his appearance and tone when he said it. I never noticed it then. In my life since I've been put in situations where I can now confidently explain the emotions all 3 men showed, sheer terror. This is the look you have on your face when you are struggling to keep your head above the water. This is the look on the face of a mother watching her house burn, and she knows her child is inside. It was primal fear I saw, smell, heard, and felt on both the hikers and the one local who dealt with them. This stuck with me, and then I met an elderly gentleman named Paul. Wife does in-home hospice care. Has a patient an hour away, close to the river valley and bar from the previous. Elderly man, terminally sick, riding out last days in a clergy house next to a small rural church. No family visits, very few church members, everyone in the usual reverent behavior but very distant. Paul reads the Bible and watches TV as best as he can. Wife cares for him. Asks her if she knew anybody good at woodworking. She mentions me. He would like to have a display case made for his prized possession, a golden cross. My wife called me that day. I wrote down the dimensions, start cutting some walnuts to fit the glass I had on hand. I went there the next morning to finish and deliver, and my wife said he didn't have long. Short convo, awkward situation. He's happy about the case. Adamant about the fact the case needs to be opened easily in the event it's needed. His words. No problem. Now I need access to cross for foam and felt insert. Like I said, it was awkward and I wanted to finish outside. He didn't like me taking the cross out of the room, but he reluctantly caved in. Once outside, I put a piano hinge on the case lid and started tracing out the foam board. This cross is 10 inches high and very blocky. While not solid gold, it was heavily inlaid and very decorative. Will look good with the dark blue felt I brought. While test fitting it in foam board after the first carve, it got wedged and I leveraged it out. Notice it's not solid. I held the top of the cross and pulled, exposing a roughly 4 inches double-edged blade. The rest of the cross was the sheath. Once the hilt was exposed, I noticed a familiar shape. The butt of a brass shell, 45 ACP primer was intact, but struck. The rest of the casing and lead shot was visible on the cross, handle just heavily decorated. Wife comes out the door. I sheathed the knife for some reason to hide it from her. No idea why I did this. Still can't explain. She says he's getting antsy. Give her the cross to take back to him while I finish up. I apply the felt, finish the case and take it back to him. Wife is not in the room. Paul, sitting up a little higher in the hospital bed, smiles when I show him my work. Paul is different this time. Way more lucid, much more in control. The way he looks me in the eye went from distant to almost predatory. He uncovered the cross on his lap and held it out to me, meaning for me to place it in the case I was holding. When I took cross, while he was holding the other end, he asked me if I was a God-fearing man. I hesitated, shook up at that particular phrase. I go to church sometimes, not as much as I should.
The fear of God is one way to be put on the path of salvation and on.
I say nothing, this is screwed up.
It's also the best tool to defend yourself from the evil in this world, much like that cross.
I kinda snap out of it and start fumbling with the case and cross, trying to set it down, install it, and deal with every nerve of my body screaming. Did you use this for services and such? Stammering like a child. He looked at me coldly, waited for what seemed like forever, and replied,
I am just a humble servant of the Lord, and that is a tool bestowed upon me.
I finally get the cross placed in the case, wiped up, and present the finished project to Paul, eager to end this. He was still very alert and intently focused on me. This man stared at me and then shrugged in this exasperated, well-I-tried expression. I mistakenly ask if everything is all right with the case I made.
It's fine work, Anon. I very much appreciate it. You've done your job. Mine remains to be seen.
He now seems to be fading back to the medicated state he's always been in before.
Please don't tell anyone about what that cross actually is.
This startled me and I looked dead at him again. Predatory gleam returned to his eyes, and I got a view of the younger, more imposing man he once was. I stuttered in an attempt to deny knowing anything, and he wasn't having it. I know you've seen the bullet that put me on my path just as easily as I know you've seen the effects of the evil whose blood has been spilled by that very blade. I see it clearly on you, and I ask that you do not interfere with God's will. Will you please be sure this is given to Pastor Stewart? He will know of its importance in the community. Then, as quick as he went from alert and almost feral, he slipped back into the haze I normally seen him in, maybe more tired. I left and joined my wife, who was in the other room, oblivious to the entire conversation. She asked if I was leaving. I said no, it's too late. No way in hell I was leaving her alone with this guy. While he never was threatening, there was something not quite right. He remained in a medicated state the rest of the night, and into the morning when the next nurse came in. Pastor Stewart arrived early to check on Paul. I gave him the case cross as promised. He took it from me with a sort of dread, but was tight-lipped during the whole exchange. Finally, we got out of there. I followed my wife home and went on with life. Paul passed later that day. My wife couldn't get much info from her work because the church was being very secretive. Everything was private. Over the years, I've asked her about her few days with Paul, and she insists it was normal. I believe her, plus the fact that you don't want to dwell on that stuff when doing that work. I've never told her or anyone else yet. I will, but this is my practice run. Please tell me what you think. In before. I don't think I want to give the location of this church or area out just yet. It feels wrong.
Be me, paddling down the Allegheny and then Ohio River with friends and future wife for a week. Excited. First couple days consist of lazily floating in a canoe and chucking jello shots at each other. Camping at night, worried about bears more than anything. Day 3, in an area called Tionesta, late afternoon. Hear faint gunshots and hooting and all sorts or noise. Laugh to a friend that they are having one hell of a party. Hear angry bees zipping by. Friend realizes people are shooting at us. We get up and get ready to row. Yell back at the forest, "Hey assholes, we are rowing here," thinking it's a bunch of drunks target shooting. See chunks of wood break off from the canoe of my friend in front of me. He's just totally red, rowing as hard as he can. On shore, a bunch of men and women come running out of the forest. They are dressed totally in black robes. They have a white sheet of paper on their face. Bunch of women with handguns are taking pot shots at us and screaming. I doubt any female was over 30, and there were a few girls that had to be 12 or 14 by body type. Couple men with rifles are laughing and waving. Think well, we are dead. A .308 can reach us easily. Luckily the men don't use them. Live through the most harrowing 20 minutes of my life while people chase after us firing handguns from the shore wildly. Amazingly, nobody got hit. Eventually they run out of ammo and slink off one by one. Big what the F. Paddle through nightfall. Reach a camp. Go to the office, report this absolute shitshow. Kid totally believes us, really wide-eyed. Says the landline doesn't work and on the river cells haven't worked for days. He says the local ranger is an asshole and guards an old cemetery. We should talk with him. Tells us to break inside, shine flashlights and wait and explain. Do that. Not even 10 minutes later this old pickup pulls up, no plates, pretty sketchy. Guy gets out, wife says, "Hey, are you the ranger? We gotta talk to you." Bastard pulls out a 9mm and discharges it into the ground next to him. Walks at us until he gets close, fires again. Never say a word while doing any of this. We just run, haul ass down the cemetery hill, across the camp, get on canoes and paddle till we reach the end of the Allegheny, where it transforms into another river in the morning. That is a weird place.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.